Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. So y'all are getting two videos this week. A little bit later this week I'll be getting the first mission in LEGO Batman. It will not be a series, but giving y'all at least the first episode. But yeah, afterwards definitely going to be hunkering down and getting that series done. And putting out a review as soon as I can. I'll be putting out two different reviews for LEGO Batman. One will be a non-spoiler review, and then the other one will be the platinum-worthy review. Well, actually, it'll probably just be one review. It'll be the stereotypical, classic, is it platinum-worthy? But first half will be spoilers, second half will be... first half will be spoiler-free, and second half will be spoilers. So, just keeping that in mind. So for, future... Well, but that'll be probably either late next month or the month after. It is going to take me a little bit of time because we got a bunch of stuff coming up. Now, two housekeeping things before we talk about today's video subject. 1. Destiny 2, that Shadow Order update date I got wrong. It is June 9th instead of June 3rd. June 9th, honestly, for me, is a little bit better because 007 releases next week. And of course, now you're not going to be getting a full-blown series. I have to get a new USB because it is broken. This might be a USB to work for some fucking reason. But something to keep in mind here is I actually just can't have it being delayed another week. Past June 9th, I'll still be able to do the event. Because what will probably happen is July 7th, I believe, will still be the date that I end the event. So it'll actually last for a little less than, July 8th. July 8th. That'll be the last, no, yeah, I was right, July 7th. July 7th will still be the date. I cannot push it much further. If Bungie wants to delay it until the 17th, sure, but it's going to be my involvement with the event is going to be heavily dependent on when Halo on the PS5 releases. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, getting into today's video here. Content creators do not understand Titans at all. This is more of a reference to 4 in particular. But the fourth one is This goes for Toad Smoothie, Llama, and LCV Vault Gaming, or as we'll get into a little bit of his document. Those 3 content creators especially do not understand Titan. And based on gameplay footage that I've seen, they are not Titan mains. But I think like the way I'm more with Llama and Toad Smoothie, I'm more so in reference to how Stasis and Strand works in the new supers. They are terrible from a Titan's perspective. From a Titan main's perspective. Now, LCV Vault Gaming, I doubt that he's a Titan main as well. A lot of content creators just aren't Titan mains. Me personally, besides the 4th that I will mention here in a second, and I've seen him play quite a bit of some other classes, I personally do not know a single content creator that's an actual Titan main. Gascaro, Warlock, Toad, I believe is a Warlock as well, Llama, Hunter. So, like, and I'm not completely sure what MNF mains as well, but I mean, even if you look at Bungie footage, to be fair, it's not super often that there's a Titan in the fire team. It's usually a bunch of Warlocks and Hunters for the most part. And if there is a Titan, they're using some fuck-ass shit that no Titan really fucking uses. Or they have an incoherent setup. So, that's, for the memes, know what a Bungie's played Titan, that is a meme, but Titan is the least played class. I don't know if that's still the case, but that's been the case for ages in Destiny 2, for ages. Hunter's number 1, Warlock's number 2, Titan's last. But we're going to be getting into those, and some of the comments that I'm going to say about Titan specifically is going to track over to the other Guardian classes. So, that's how you'll be able to tell who has a deep understanding of why certain aspects of build crafting works, why some aspects of build crafting don't work. Now, there is a difference between goofy setups and non-goofy setups. As y'all know, I've done some goofy-ass setups that are not meta at all. For example, any shotgun build that I have is pretty much not viable. is pretty much not viable with Slayer's Fangame with Legend of Acryus. Sure, is it usable? Technically, yes. Is it good? No. Also some meme builds like the Joe Hendry build. That sort of stuff. Now, the fourth character I was mentioning, Astacross. He's the fourth. He says he's a Titan main. I don't agree with a decent amount of his opinions in terms of when he saw the Titan supers and shit from Toast Smoothie and Llama. Like, okay. Now, I am going to mention all three classes for them or whatever, but, and we'll go into Llama's video first here. Then we'll go into Google Doc, and then we'll mix in some actual gameplay in terms of how these supers actually fucking work, and why some of the Titan supers are good, why some of the Titan supers are bad. So, on that note, though, let's go ahead and get to the first one. Now, here we have Llama's thing, missing supers. Now, I'm going to skip quite a bit ahead here. We're going to go, that's Strand Hunter. So, this is where the first note of categories not really understanding why supers work, but we'll
Threadlash. Threadlash is a first-person roaming and shutdown hybrid super, where the hunter...
There's a Strand Hunter already has a roaming and shutdown super. That's Threaded Needle. Why are you adding a second one? Why are you adding a second one? There's no reason to add a second one. Now, I know this is coming very late for me personally, but this kind of stuff has started to piss me off.
Summons a strand lasso that can be thrown towards enemies, dealing damage over time. And it has two unique behaviors: killing an enemy...
Okay. Also, something I want to mention here. This is why Burning Maul has never been meta outside of Pyrogales. It might became meta when Pyrogales happened, because Hammer of Saul is already an ad-clearing super. Hammer of Saul is already an ad-clearing super, so there's no reason to use Burning Maul. However, with Pyrogales, Burning Maul became a DPS super, so there was a reason to run Burning Maul with Pyrogales.
With a thrown lasso causes you to weave a new one, which can then be thrown again, but lassos will attach to higher health targets like champions and bosses, constricting and squeezing them while dealing heavy damage over time, and allowing the hunter to use their weapons simultaneously. It's possible to detach lassos and throw to a different target, and while a lasso is attached, it applies sever and unravel to the target, as well as siphoning a continuous stream of woven mail for the hunter. We think this super strikes a good balance.
Pretty nice, but you know,
roam as well as for boss
does not fulfill the purpose. There's no reason to use this over Threaded. No reason to use this over Silkstrike. Silkstrike, I believe, is the super's name. Now, Stasis Hunter. So, Stasis Hunter is in a little bit of a weird position because the Stasis Hunter super, Silence and Squall, can do decent damage, but it is generally an ad-clear super.
Is a third-person roaming super where the hunter summons a menacing stasis...
Which is why I'm okay with this being a roaming super for the most part, because Silence of Squall is in a weird position.
Scythe with a dynamic moveset. We took inspiration from the Praxic Blade and decided it would be cool if the super had a baked-in combo string of 3 light attacks that eventually launch your target into the air, followed by 1 heavy attack that then slams them back into the ground. Similarly, we also thought it would be cool for you to be able to throw the scythe and have it bounce between enemies, and to provide a team support angle, we've also given it the ability to cast an Ascension-style move that damages and slows nearby enemies, as well as granting frost armor to any nearby allies. The idle stance is very formal, and was actually inspired by the playable Count Dooku.
Like that, I don't mind necessarily. That I don't mind. Okay, but like that, I don't necessarily mind, right? And now this is Warlock. Warlock, again, Strand Warlock does not have a support super. They are super. In my opinion, I would define it as more of a DPS super. Most damaged one-off supers can be used also as that. Like Thunderclash, yeah, you can Thunderclash to a pile of enemies. Same with like Golden Gun, for instance, or Gathering Storm. So
strand equivalent
I define it more
flame.
as
Casting
a
super will expand your
DPS
domain
super.
and projects a domain aura around you that moves with you, retaining the ability to
But
use
this is
your weapons.
good.
While Dominion is
Good,
active,
right?
pressing your grenade.
Good. I'm not going to get into all of these because I don't want this video to be too long. But at least you can see animations and whatnot. Again, animations are very well done. Okay, but they're Strand Warlock.
Ultimately let down by its super because Winter's Wrath is roaming and lasts for quite a long time.
This
Plus,
is a roaming
also
super, this
doesn't
is
do
not a
lot of
damage super.
So where you summon 3 stasis icicles above your head, which can then be hurled towards your enemies. Light attacking will throw 1 icicle at a time, and heavy attacking will fire all 3 at once for maximum damage. The icicles would instantly freeze anything they come into contact with, and firing all 3 at once will also activate a frostbite explosion, with frostbite being the first new keyword we've created for stasis, but more on that later. This super is probably the one I'm most proud of and would seriously love to see in game. Let me know your thoughts.
This one's fine. It would just have to do damage. It needs to be like sort of something similar to like Golden Gun. You cannot repeat the 3 crystal stuff. Now let's move to Titan. Titan, as you'll know, is the one I had the most issues with. Both of these supers are not particularly great.
Option, a goddamn minigun, and thus we created the Thread Cutter. Thread Cutter is a first-person roaming super that summons a strand minigun to lay waste to your enemy.
Titans already have too many roaming supers. We already have too many roaming supers. All of Titan's supers are pretty much roaming supers, except for Thunder Crash. They had axes, and even then, axes is in a weird spot because you can pick those axes up. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? That being said, the reason why I'm okay with this is because it can hit flying enemies. This can hit flying enemies. Most Titan supers cannot. So I'm okay with this roaming super being able to hit flying enemies, which is great. And the other strand super, Berserker, or I believe that's what Blade Fury is what it's called. That one can also be used as damage as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Like, sure, is it decent for ad clearing? Yes. But its primary use is mostly used for damage for the most part.
The minigun fires at 900 RPM, applies Unravel, and ramps up its damage the longer it's fired. Much like Chaos Reach, the super can be cancelled early to preserve super energy, and dealing damage with Thread Cutter will generate and discharge stacks of unstable weave. Our second new keyword, which again will come to
this
discuss
super, I don't
shortly.
mind.
We think this super fits the Titan identity really well, and again, really wish to see it in-game. Old concept art even hints that a similar super was considered initially, though it appears this one here is more of a flamethrower type vibe.
But this is not as offensive. The stasis one is where we start to get really bad.
Any enemies are caught within it, activating your super inside of boss fights specifically.
I just want y'all to see the animation. That's just Cryoclasm. That is a Stasis Titan aspect. That is just a Stasis Titan aspect. Cursive, want you to see that? So this is it against single targets. Also, sorry, I meant Hallow the Storm. You know what? We will use the exact same... Oh, I forget which symbol. That's Hive, right? Yeah, that's Hive. We'll go ahead and use an Ogre. The exact same model. What you just saw is just Cryoclasm. This is just Cryoclasm. The super is just a beefed up Cryoclasm. And what purpose does the super really do? First off, it can't hit ranged enemies. Still, that is Stasis Titan's biggest issue. Is none of it can hit flying enemies. Stasis Super cannot, unless the enemy has to be flying quite a decent way low. Like, it has to be pretty low to the ground. Glacier Grenade cannot. Cold Snap does not. Duskfield can technically, but doesn't really. The melee sure can, but Hallow the Storm cannot. Stasis Titan has some sliding shenanigans. You have not solved any of Stasis Titan's issues. You have not solved any of Stasis Titan's issue with that super. You still is only grounded, at least to my knowledge. At least Strand, Blade Fury, Blade Fury can hit with flying enemies with a heavy attack, and at least you can grapple up top, right? You can shackle flying enemies, right? And you do have Flechette Storm, which can hit flying enemies. Not super easily, but you can. Stasis cannot! And you have not done anything to fix that! Now, this is where we get into this document. This was done by LCV. Some of his ideas I like. I think a little bit more planning could get thought out. But here's my problem. So for here, I'm not going to go into any of the Hunter shenanigans. I'm going to go into Titan here, specifically. This just displays a lack of what makes Titan Titan. Hammer Assault does not need to be changed. That's fine. Do not worry about any affinity stat shenanigans. That doesn't matter for the purposes of this video. Hammer Assault being untouched, it's great. Hammer Assault is the perfect super. Hammer Assault is the perfect super. Just to demonstrate here. Let's get some wizards in here. Also, don't worry about Bentuba grenades. Okay, they're not properly flying, but usually they're higher up than this. The Hammer Assault. You can hit low, spot a sunspot. You can hit high. You know, you can hit anywhere. This is great. You can hit anywhere. Long range, close range. Perfect, right? It's actually honestly, Hammer Assault is probably the best Titan Super in terms of usability and what it can do, outside of damage, of course. Now back to this document. Burning Maul, split super. His idea was basically to have like a golden gun situation where there's two supers, but they're basically the same thing. Burning Maul, one being Power Gale version of Burning Maul, and then Roaming being the base Burning Maul being widely untouched, which is crazy. To demonstrate how Burning Maul kind of works currently, first off, you're removing the synergy it has with, like, these were his ideas for Destiny 3, but this is more so as if this cannot stay the same state. I wish I could control how high they flew. But this super, first off, the light attack does this. It does do quite a bit of damage, right? You can actually hit it flying, but it's not easy because it launches you past. Then, of course, Heavy Slam will not always hit a flying enemy. Sometimes they'll go straight past. But you can hit flying enemies that way. A little bit, but it's not easy to do. The Heavy cannot. Also, as you saw with the Wizard there, it goes straight past the enemy. In my opinion, if you were to bring the super back or anything like that, the tracking, like, it has to be a lot more stickier on flying enemies when you're swinging that thing. Because, yeah, you kind of just go flying past them, so it's almost never worth doing. Which is why no one ever uses Burning Maul. Now, real quick here. Okay, I actually don't have Power Gills in my inventory, so I have to grab that real quick. Why the fuck do I have Icefall Mantle out? Like, what the fuck is, like, what? Okay, but yeah, we're going with arms here. Power Gales, I believe, is the only exotic that changes its super in a meaningful way. But we're just gonna have these on real quick. Keep in mind, no matter if you're light or heavy, it does the 3 waves. Now, the solar waves are honestly quite high, so they are pretty likely to hit flying enemies. But enemies aren't the only thing that flies. Mini boss, like strike bosses, a lot of them do fly. So, what do you do about those? But because Hammer Assault fills an ad clear role and it can hit flying enemies, is also why you'll never really see Burning Maul realistically being used in an ad clear role. You'll most likely be seeing it used in a Pyrogale sense. If anything, I would not split the two supers. I would just eliminate the ad clearing of Pyrogales and just keep Hammer Assault. Keep in mind though, what is the common theme here? You have ad clear DPS, you have add clear damage. And if you want a third super, you add in support. Or you have a mixture of the three. Now, Void. Sentinel Shield unchanged, which is fine. Sentinel Shield will be widely untouched. Yada yada yada. Here's the thing: Sentinel Shield is great for ad clearing. It can hit flying enemies. Perfect ad clear super. This is why I have said that Void Titan has the best suite of 3 supers, because they all do something different. Now, he was also saying remove Bubble and Well. I would say no, and it was okay. Slight little aside here. Here is my opinion on being able to shoot through Bubble versus Well. Like, does Bubble become Well at that point? No. Because the Bubble is a lot easier for bosses to destroy than the Well itself. Because you can basically guide the boss away from the sword while still being in there. Keep in mind, despite the Well sword resistance, like the nerfs or whatever, Crota, we didn't really have issues with anyone breaking a Well until Crota. Crota's return was the first time bosses breaking Well became an issue. Also, it's an issue that hasn't really returned in a meaningful way since. Bubble, bosses can hit the fuck out of that shit and break it. That being said, the only way to probably help avoid this is by putting a barricade in front of it or inside or something like that. But yeah, bosses are going to be able to destroy a bubble way easier, even if you're able to shoot through the bubble. So that's kind of a non-issue in my opinion, because it's no way it's going to last as long as a Well, right? What that could lead to is the return of stacking Well and Bubble. Because in case y'all do not know, back when Deepstone Crypt was in its earlier phase, you would have somebody using Bubble and Well, because Bubble gave a bigger damage bonus than Well at the time. Which, honestly, I would not mind that returning, to give Bubble some actual fucking use in a raid setting. It hasn't had any use in any setting for a long time. The Sentinel Shield, really good. You have your Bubble as your support super, and Twilight Arsenal your damage super. Now, I'm not going to get into this necessarily, because, yeah, I'm not getting into that. No, Arc. Arc has the major issue called Fist of Havoc. In my personal opinion, there's nothing you could do to the super to make it useful. Now, Thunder Crash, of course, Thunder Crash is a damage super, but it can also hit flying bosses. Axes can hit flying bosses. Burning Maul, the Pyrogale variation, cannot. Also, you trying to use Strand Titan, can you technically use it on flying bosses? Yes, but it's not easy to do. Floating bosses is not as bad, because you can aim for their lower part or whatever, but it's not super easy to hit necessarily, and occasionally you might get a melee to whiff, or track on an different enemy that might be close to that boss. So, it's a little bit finicky. But Thunder Crash, great. Fist of Havoc, however, this is why I don't like, well, back to Arc here. Y'all know how Thunder Crash works. But Fist of Havoc, what it's supposed to do right now, it's supposed to escalate on multiple Fist Slams. We're going to go to Knight here because it's grounded. Now, the problem with Fist of Havoc is that Slam Down can only hit grounded enemies. Which is kind of a problem. That is... Okay. Oh, well. Also, if you're not jumping down, then activating the super, it can be an issue. This can technically... No, it can't. You can't even dash upward. You cannot dash upward with the super. You will only dash horizontally. Sorry, vertically, rather. What the fuck am I on? But yeah, you jump, then you activate this shit. Also, the Slam Down doesn't travel as much as it needs to. But the biggest issue is that melee, even with me aiming straight up, it'll only launch me forward. It will not launch me any other direction. I think if you really want Fist of Havoc to have some semblance of shine, I think you kind of got to let me be able to melee enemies and buff the melee attack to Chain Lightning or something like that, while Fist of Havoc is active. I think that's probably the best way to make Fist of Havoc usable. But again, when somebody's using Arc, what do you never see them using? Fist of Havoc. Not gonna be able to make that shit meta without being able to hit those flying enemies. Because Thunder Crash can. And it's damage. So like, why would I use anything else? Now this is the part in the document where I started to crash out. Or I started to crash out a little bit. In terms of, wow. How do you have this little of an understanding? Now, Stasis Titan, Glacial Quake, unchanged? Unchanged? Ah! One of the worst supers in... Oh! Now, would I change how it's used necessarily? No. What I would do is I would make the damage way more consistent. Because that's the biggest issue with Glacial Quake right now, is it is very, very inconsistent in terms of damage. Like, holy shit, is it inconsistent. And maybe some way to have the melee just break all of the crystals instead of have to try to walk through or slide or melee through them. Some way for the crystals to break automatically, or have the melee break all of them instead of just a few of them, I think would be quite helpful of a change. But yeah, Glacial Quake is not in a good state. Its damage is inconsistent as fuck. Now, a lot of Stasis Titan's fun stuff is not in the super at all. It is in the aspects. Like, Diamond Lance, pretty solid. I personally do like using Howl of the Storm. It's not super duper viable, but it is fun. Now, the new super. On activation, charge up a barrage of stasis crystals from the ground, creating a slowing field around the player. After the crystals are formed, hurl them towards the target, applying impact damage and slow strike per hit. Any stasis crystals that miss, leave behind large crystals on the ground. The only thing that's going to be able to hit the flying enemy is hurling the crystal. And like I said, like my idea, they're a big fucking giant chunk of ice. But do not just let me throw it at the ground. Like, let me throw that shit at a flying enemy. Let me throw that shit at a flying enemy. Now for Strand Titan. Blade Fury. Doesn't need any changes. Reverberating Blast. On activation, grab a collection of strand energy with both hands and slam them together, causing a strand shockwave, causing impact damage, and unraveling all affected targets. Why? Why? Why would ever use the super when Banner of War exists? Why would ever use this when Banner of War exists? Why? Why? And just something to keep in mind here. Let's talk about Tosu and the Llama first. With their Strand Titan one, I'm okay with. Not a huge fan of how it works, but it's alright. It would be Titans, like it'd be fine. But Stasis. Why are we doing this to Stasis? The only way Stasis Titan can really deal with flying enemies is with Diamond Lances. That's kind of the only way we can fucking deal with it. Of course, I'm talking about outside of melees here. Otherwise, you have to mention things like Shield Throw and Throwing Hammer for Solar and Void. These are one of the reasons why Solar and Void are just flat out better than Stasis. And have been for a long time, is because in those classes, Titans have ranged options. Stasis has an extreme lack of ranged options, and I'm stunned and shocked that none of these content creators have bothered to fucking figure that out. But oh yeah, let's give Strand Titan some range. That's not Strand Titan. Strand Titan is fine as is. If you're gonna add a new super, sure, the machine gun, whatever. But also, you know what the issue is with that Strand machine gun? It can't melee. And guess what? Banner of War builds around melee. Into the fray, you gain increased melee regeneration rate. Dranger Slash is a little bit different, but also, it doesn't really build into your barricade in any way. Flechette Storm is in relation to melee. Titans would have to get a new aspect to be able to even build into that particular super. But, oh, I guess no one thought about that. No one thought about it. The fact that Strantine's kit almost, like, there's not much benefit to using anything else but melee and swords or, like, a shotgun for, like, 1-2 punch or something like that. Because even when you're using none of those, you're using a weapon like Pugilist Swashbuckler that feeds back into your melee. Now, I'm not saying that Strantine doesn't need, like, we have to have a melee super as our final one. I do think Strantine, you could do a support super for the most part. But again, Banner of War already has a decent amount of support. But again, Bungie's not afraid to double dip into supports in that respect. Because for Void, you have Bubble and Bastion. So for those reasons, I would be fine with having a Strand support super. That somehow, works or whatever. But instead of it, whatever, you know what I mean. But Strantine is mainly built around meleeing. For me personally, I don't see how the Strand Machine Gun Super would fit into any sort of build with Strand. The only way I could see it really working is if it was on Prismatic and replaced Blade Fury on Prismatic. That's the only way. But, speaking of Prismatic, the issue with this Prismatic is lack of range as well, because Thunder Crash, DPS, Axes, damaging super, but you do have some range with Hammer Assault. Blade Fury has a little bit of range. Glacial Quake. Glacial Quake is terrible. So, and keep in mind, Hammer Assault is not that good without Sol Invictus. Sol Invictus is pretty much necessary for Hammer of Sol. It just does not feel as good without Sol Invictus. So that is something to keep in mind. And I'm not a big fan of that. So that is something to keep in mind. And also, Blade Fury, at least in my opinion, doesn't feel as great without Banner of War. Without Banner of War. So really, only Thunder Crash and Axis are the supers that feel pretty solid to use for the most part. But that's besides the point or whatever. So, we haven't gotten 3 subclasses we haven't gotten 3 supers for most of the light classes, right? At least on Titan. Warlocks and Hunters, y'all are in a little bit of an iffy spot because y'all have several supers that are 2, but they really should be consolidated into 1, at least in my opinion. Looking at you, Tether, there's no reason to have fucking 2 variations. But in order for supers to feel unique from each other, they have to fit 3 main things. Damage, clear, and support. One of those 3 should be filled by your 3 supers. To help them feel distinct from each other. That's why Void feels so good. But that's also why Solar doesn't feel as great, because Solar Warlock, sorry, I didn't mean Warlock. Solar Warlock does not have a damage super. You have Dawnblade, which is an clear super. And by the way, these are supers at their core. These are not supers with augmentations or whatever. Like, sure, you can use anything for DPS. You can use a fucking uncharged melee for DPS. Does that make uncharged melee a damage melee? No. So, Dawnblade is an clear super. However, Solar Warlock has 2 support supers for some reason, being Song of Flame and Well of Radiance. This is part of the reason why I actually did not care for Song of Flame's inclusion. It's fine, but Well exists. It's filling 2 purposes. And since Song of Flame was released, how many times have you seen Well? There you are. Also, Void Hunter has an interesting issue as well, because Tether is an all-in-one. It can act clear, depending on which tree you use, which is why you will never see Spectral Blades being used unless it turns into like hard, like best in act clear or best in damage or something like that. But it also supports and it does pretty decent damage. That super is probably one of the best supers in the entire game. I would argue Tether is probably the best super in the entire game because it fits all 3 of those themes together. Now, coming back to Titan here. Arc, we have Thunder Crash. That's your damage super. Fist of Havoc, your Actor super. Again, I would like to be able to target flying enemies with the light attack. And in my personal opinion, I would appreciate it if you were a certain distance away from the ground, it doesn't slam down. It does something different instead, or something to that effect. Now, what would the third arc super be? Support. I would like it to be a support super, just to make it distinct. Don't want another Ad Clear Super. Because the second you add another Ad Clear Super, Fist of Havoc will never see the light of day, no matter how much you buff it. And you can't add another damage super. Thunder Crash is already goaded. Thunder Crash is already goaded. The only problem with Thunder Crash is you're in melee range when you land that Thunder Crash. But they've kind of helped it nowadays to give you a damage resist upon exiting it. Now, Solar. Solar Titan does not have a support super. That is the only role not filled. Burning Maul, you technically have 2 Ad Clear supers at their core. I would be okay with a damage super, but the damage super cannot rely on Roaring Flames to operate, like Pyrogale Burning Maul does. But I would prefer a support super here because Burning Maul, as with Pyrogales, is technically your DPS option, your damage super option for the most part. Void. Perfect, right? Ad Clear. Support. Damage. All 3 roles filled. Fan flippin-tastic. Now Strand. The only role filled here is Ad Clear. Berserker at its core is Ad Clear. However, it does good damage, so that's why a lot of times it is used for damage. The main role is not filled as damage and support. So whatever Strand super they come up with, that needs to fill one of those 2 roles. It cannot just be an Ad Clear super. I'm sick of Ad Clear supers as a Titan. I'm sick of them. Now, Stasis. Glacial Quake is in a weird position because of Stasis' kit as a whole. Now, again, technically speaking, Glacial Quake is an Ad Clear super, but it's terrible at Ad Clearing. It doesn't do support, and its damage is very inconsistent. So, but at its core, it is an Ad Clearing super. However, because of the way it's used with the rest of Titan's kit, and the super is almost never actually used for Ad Clearing, and it's not that easy to use it for Ad Clearing, I'm actually going to identify this one as a damage super because no one uses it as an Ad Clear super, which is unique to this in particular. Because, yeah, some people do use Blade Fury for Ad Clearing. That's what we all used it initially for anyways. We didn't really use it for damage until Banner of War released. But Stasis Titan Super, when using it for damage for the most part for a while, I would call this a sustained damage super. It's not like Axes or Thunder Crash where it kind of dabbles in both. This one kind of hard leads into one or the other. But I would define this as a damage super. If you're going to identify this as a damage super, the Ad Clear version of this has to deal damage to flying enemies. It has to deal damage to them. Has to. You just got to. Now, I would not mind something like you're able, like during the super, you throw rocks or whatever, like ice chunks, like ice crystals or whatever, at flying enemies, similar to Hammer of Saul. But when they land, they explode or whatever, or something to that effect. I'd be fine with that. If you're going to do, however, and then of course you can do support. Support is always the option for Stasis. However, if you identify Behemoth as an Ad Clear super, the DPS, the damage super, has to be able to hit flying enemies and has to be a one-off super. It has to be a one-off super. Because if it is not, you run into an issue where Behemoth and the other super are competing with each other. Because sustained damage. But anyways, those are my thoughts on the Llama and Toad's ideas for Strand and Stasis Titans, and you're a content creator. Just listen real quick. Just listen real quick. Just listen to me. Before we start talking about subclasses, that sort of thing, do some actual build crafting yourself. You'll never really hear me talk that much about Warlock or Hunter, for the most part, at least as in-depth as Titan. Even though, yes, I have done builds for Warlock and Hunter. That's not my main field necessarily. Do I know some stuff about this custom? Of course I do. But like, holy, the lack of understanding from content creators on how Titans work is astounding. And just the basics of the super needs to fill one of those 3 themes. What are we doing? Especially the Titan super just being a Howl of the Storm? What are we doing? It's just a Howl of the Storm that you can charge. Again, these are some issues that you're only going to recognize if you build Crash a lot. Of course, I'm a build guy. I'm at least used to make builds all the time. I made some goofy ass shit, but I knew what worked and I knew what didn't work. And listen, for the builds that didn't work, I told you, hey, this build is scuffed. This build is just a fun build. I don't necessarily recommend using this necessarily, especially in high-end content. I say that because I know the flaws of that build. And the flaws are probably usually pretty bad, especially for certain classes. If you're going to try to come up with new ideas, I think that's perfectly good. I think to make them realistic, you got to keep in mind what are the issues with that subclass, or with that super spread, or with the particular melee. If you're looking at melees, what are the issues with that, and is my idea solving any of those issues? For example, the Strand Titan Super from Llama's video. Is it solving any issue that Strand Titan has? No, it isn't. And also, is it going to synergize with anything that's already there? The answer is also no. Titans don't really have any aspects that build into threat links. Or unraveling necessarily. Most of their stuff is built into severing and some suspend shenanigans. So there is that. And then for the Stasis Super, besides the fact that it's a cryoclasm, does it serve a different purpose than Glacial Quake does? No. It is just Glacial Quake, but worse. And is it solving any sort of problem? Like, if it's basically the same thing, is it solving any problem that Stasis Titan already has as a whole? No, because Stasis Titan's problem is lack of being able to hit flying enemies, which, by the way, is a major, major issue. Every single enemy faction has flying enemies. And a lot of them tend to be quite mobile as well. And they tend to be higher than what they are in the arms area or whatever. Then looking at Arc. Your new super. Okay, what is it doing? Is it doing damage? Why should I use it over Thunder Crash? Is it Ackling? Why should I use it over Fist of Havoc? Is it fixing anything that's unsolved here? With Arc Titan, I can tell you the issue here. Survivability. Survivability is a pretty big issue for Arc Titan when you're using it solo. With the team, it's not too bad, but when you're solo, Arc Titan survivability is a mild issue. Is your super fixing that issue? I would say that this is what I'm saying is the biggest issue with Arc. Solar. First off, are you solving anything in the super department? We don't have a support super. We don't have a proper damage super. Okay, what is Solar Titan's biggest issue? I would say Solar Titan's biggest issue is reliance on Roaring Flames. I would say reliance on Roaring Flames. That's probably the biggest issue. And is your thing solving any of that? Now, also, I will say Radiant. Radiant, I would say, over Roaring Flames, lack of being able to get Radiant is Solar Titan's biggest issue. We can't get Radiant reliably. The only way is you have to run a specific fragment and then melee. That's the only way we can get Radiant. For Void, because it already has 3 supers, do not add another super. But if you're focusing on any of these abilities, what does Void Titan really struggle with? I would argue any worthwhile being able to build into suppression. I would also say damage department. Void is not really great in damage. And overall damage. Also, volatile uptime is pretty rough as well. But weapon perks have kind of helped alleviate that issue. So that's something to keep in mind. Anyways, though, that was going to do it for this video. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, and I will catch y'all on the flip side.